everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm tuning in from Amsterdam, so I hope wherever you are, it's just as sunny as it is here today. Really looking forward to, let me actually just quickly go ahead and share my screen for you all. Bear with me 1 second. Awesome. So yeah, just before we get started, I also wanted to let you know we will have a few polls. So if you can maybe have a look through those already, and then as we get going through the slides, it might make a little bit more sense. So I'll be sure to call those out just before we review those. Love to know your feedback there. And yeah, really looking forward to walking you through our presentation today on, how you can go from batch and blast to really have a personalization strategy at scale, and which ultimately obviously is accelerating your mobile revenue. Maybe just as a quick introduction from both of our sides, my name is Brooke. I'm a senior customer success manager at Leanplum, and as mentioned, I'm based in Amsterdam. What that means is really I'm working with customers, really cool companies like Popstar, to ensure that there's optimization throughout the user journey, right? From onboarding, engagement to conversion and retention. So yeah, super thrilled to be joined by Becky today, one of my amazing customers. And I know she has some really awesome stuff to share with you as well. So I'll let her do just a quick introduction of herself as well.
Thanks, Brooke, and hi everyone. Very nice to sort of meet you. It's very weird not being able to see anyone's faces. I've been at Popstar for a couple of years now. I'm in desperate need of a new LinkedIn profile. Please ignore the sunglasses. We've done a fair bit of work on our behavior trigger campaigns, and we've got lots of exciting plans for personalization. So looking forward to sharing some of those with you guys shortly.
Cool. Thanks for that, Becky. Perfect. So for an agenda today, we'll kick it off with just a quick introduction of Leanplum. And then I'd like to touch a little bit on the evolution of data-driven marketing and how we really got into this personalization world that we're in today. We also did a recent data study report that I want to share some insights with you and really shed some light on why personalization is so important today in terms of both revenue, but also just your user's experience in general. And then I'll pass it over to Becky, who will introduce Popstar and speak to a little bit on how they plan to tackle, using advanced personalization in the future as well, and kind of the path that got them there. So lastly, I know as well, we have some people in the chat that will answer any questions you might have, and hopefully we have some time at the end to just do a live Q&A as well. So feel free to pop those into the chat there. And yeah, looking forward to it. So let's get into it. I first, again, wanted to start off by just sharing a little bit more about Leanplum for those of you who aren't familiar with us. Leanplum is a mobile first, but channel agnostic CRM platform. So what exactly does that mean? It means that we're really able to ingest data from anywhere. So it could be your app, your website, your CDP, really any data source, and you can use this information to then create a unified profile within Leanplum. You can then utilize this data to, segment, to trigger campaigns off, personalized content, test, engage, and send engagement through a number of different channels, whether it be email or in-app push. You can taste the product UI of the app itself, and really anything, you name it. So what we see is that when you combine all of these different multi-channel campaigns, and you're continually optimizing and testing, that's really where we see that most uplift in engagement and conversion. So if you are interested in learning more, definitely you can drop me an email or just go to our website or connect on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to set something up with you. Cool. Next things, let's see here. So where did this focus on personalization come from, right? You could say it's been around forever. Maybe if you go back in time and you're going to your local cafe, maybe the barista knows your name and they can already start making your oat milk cappuccino because they know that you like that. Maybe they didn't have oat milk back then, but anyways. And perhaps they could recommend something tasty to go with your coffee as well. It's just as a little upsell. So the barista is really trying to give you that tailored and memorable experience, which would be different from anyone who came in after me. And that's something that we're trying to do today. But obviously, when you have thousands or millions of customers at the same time, it's increasingly difficult to make sure that that unique is so or that experience is so unique to that user, right? So if we just kind of go back and see kind of how we got to this really advanced personalization phase, we do start with this blast and batch approach, which I'm sure you're all familiar with and you've probably done in some form or another as well. You know, after that era, you really started seeing companies start testing their communication, but not really segmenting in any specific way. So just taking a group of, you know, group A users and testing certain content, and group B and testing another certain content. So you're really trying to optimize in seeing what strategy or which messaging is working best. So obviously that's a little bit better than batch and blast, but it's still not to where it needs to be today. Then we moved into a segmentation route, which I'm sure most of you on the call are also probably doing today. Segmentation is really just that process of dividing your entire user base into different groups. And this could be on any kind of different static data point of your users, whether it be, you know, age, gender, location, past purchase history, and manually tailoring the content that would be relevant based on that segmentation, right? So now then we go one step further. This is really where customers are striving to be today, or companies, excuse me, are striving to be today, is this personalization. So personalization is, you know, really that strategy of creating that unique experience, like I spoke about with the barista, but on a much larger scale for their unique users. And this is not just from, you know, one specific channel, but it's across all different channels and all different touch points of that user journey, from, you know, when they first discover your brand, but then through to conversion and so forth. So initially, this is something, you know, what was you know, used with single name, you know, hi Brooke or something like that. But obviously that's been around for a decade, that type of personalization. So we really need to start taking it to the next level. And the ways in which we can do that is really based on that user activity. And this could be including, you know, recent searches or recent purchases and all of this type of data that we're now starting to collect on users. And today there's even this personalization 2.0, which you might heard of, or this individualization that we're getting into, which is just really, you know, creating an even better experience that's uniquely designed for that person, you know, in that moment specifically. So this is something that will optimize each and every person, but obviously you need a lot of data unification around that. You need multi-channel deployment to meet that real-time need of these users. And I think that's also an area where Leanplum is really powerful in making that happen for your users. And let's say, you know, just to take a step back and put this into a real life example, let's say a user visits your e-commerce app and they want to buy a candle. You know, I've been buying so many candles lately, so that's really top of mind for me. And using individualization for me, let's say, you can send myself a push notification with a specific offer, and you might include the last browse candle that I was looking at, or even recommend other top selling scents that I might be interested in. And throughout this kind of, you know, individualization and personalization, your chances of increasing that engagement with that user, and also higher conversions, is much more likely. So that's really what we're looking at when we're talking about taking personalization, you know, to mass scale and taking it one step further. So why is it so important to get it right? I was actually pretty shocked when I came across these different stats. So actually a recent study from HubSpot said that, you know, 63% of users would consider ending their relationship with a brand if they were sending them some type of irrelevant content, which I think is a pretty big number. If you look at your entire, you know, email opt-in user base, if you just cut that by 63%, if you were sending irrelevant, you know, communication, that's pretty big number you probably don't want to lose. And similar study by Marketing Sherpa also shows that the right content, you know, is a reason that a lot of users will unsubscribe for content. So it's really crucial now to start investing in personalization before you start losing your customer base. The good news is that 90% or so of digital businesses are investing in some form of personalization. And it is important to also understand what this really means for you as a marketer, not just from a positive perspective, or from a positive perspective, not just from a negative perspective of users looking to then disengage with you. So really excited to share these stats with you as well. So with that, we did create a data science report to find out what works best in terms of providing that valuable communication to your users to drive revenue and engagement. So in this analysis, we measured 1,800 different campaigns 670 million messages, which is quite a lot if you ask me. And we use the last touch attribution model. There are other ways, of course, to measure impact, and I'll touch on those here in a second. But one other thing maybe to point out is that all the apps that we did take a look at, we did focus on in-app purchases, or most of them was an in-app purchase focus. So I do have coming up at the end of this slide one of the polls. So maybe while I'm walking through this slide, if you could take a look at one of the first polls there in regards to how you measure impact, that will be great to have a look at after as well. So yeah, now speaking about the, sorry, snuck ahead there. Now speaking about the different types of ways in which you can measure impact, you have a few different options that you can use. For this specific report, I mentioned we did use the last touch attribution model, and we did a pretty narrow, policy in what we looked at here. So we had a shorter attribution window of 24 hours, and we also required users to engage with that specific push notification or email before we would attribute the specific purchase. So that's something to keep in mind when looking at the data on the next couple of slides. However, there are other measurements options to look at as well. So for example, our customers, they have the option to include holdbacks, whether that's universal for all engagement that you're sending through Leanplum, and you can do this using our user buckets feature. Or you can create a holdback on a specific campaign level, which is always good as well for measuring that statistical significant uplift of that specific campaign. So that's my question to you also on the poll is, what are you doing today? Are you using maybe a last touch attribution model? Are you using universal holdback or campaign specific, or are you not measuring at all? That could also be an answer there. But the good thing is that by using a holdback, you are essentially withholding communication from a certain portion. But the reason you're doing that is to really understand what impact did this campaign or all of your campaigns combined have on the engagement of that user. So from a long-term perspective and to really understand what your CRM program is doing, it is a great way, and I do recommend to do this. Even if not all the time, because I understand you probably don't want to not send certain communication to your users because you might lose money. In that sense, it's good to understand just the impact of your program as well. Cool. So I'm going to take a quick look at the poll here and see. Oh, I played my own video there. Okay, cool. So we are about 43% are on a campaign level holdback. So it's almost 50%-ish. So that's pretty interesting to see. Last touch attribution model around 30%, and then 30% you don't use anything. So interesting, no one today is, in this session anyways, is using a universal holdback. Yeah, that might be something to think about, even again, if it's just at a certain portion of the year, just so you can understand as a whole what your marketing program is doing. So really interesting to see there. Becky, just out of curiosity, are you doing mostly, would you say, campaign level holdback or universal holdback for you?
Yeah, so we always have a campaign level holdback, and then we also use last touch attribution, but we are going to start to use universal holdbacks definitely to understand the longer term impact of campaigns.
Awesome. So all points there, and that's why we brought her on today to talk about the amazing things Popstar is doing as well. Cool. On to the next slide here. There will be, we'll touch on the other poll at the end of this slide as well, so you can have a look at that if you haven't already. And yeah, so when looking at this data science report, we did have this kind of breakthrough moment. We found that there was essentially this ladder of personalization amongst all the different campaigns that we analyzed. So this is a ladder that essentially you're climbing to the top in order to become more targeted, more personalized, and more engaging with your campaign. So at the bottom, you see here is kind of this basic segmentation, which is more about demographics of the user that are really static and not changing from session to session or all the time. The next layer, you're doing still kind of these one-off or these scheduled campaigns, but your segmentation is based on user activity. So already with that next step up, you're becoming more personalized with the people you're sending the communication to. The next layer up that, you're moving from scheduled to more behavior-based triggered communication. So if a user does something in the app, you're more real time sending them contextual content based on that specific activity that they've taken. And this can be inside or outside of the app. Essentially, this is all about, creating the communication along the user journey. No matter where they are, it's relevant for them. We see a lot of customers being successful. For example, X amount of times that something has occurred. So, after 3 meditations, maybe you should trigger off a certain notification or a badge or something like that. So these are things that really we see working well with some of our customers. And the last part at the tippy top there is the content personalization. So the most basic, as mentioned, would be that first name, including maybe an email subject line or what have you. But really that's, standard practice now, and we need to kind of take that to the next level. And by doing this with content based on that specific individual's history in what they've been doing in the app, like a recent search or something like that, going back to that candle example. Obviously, these steps don't necessarily all happen at once, and you really have to work your way up the ladder. But once you start incorporating many of these different levels into your communication, it really becomes very powerful for ROI purposes. I'm going to take a look at the poll and share with you what some of the other people are saying. So when we asked how far along are you on the personalization journey, we come in at top with 26% tied with behavioral segmentation, which is great to see, and also behavior triggered delivery, which is also great to see. 21% are incorporating some type of personalized content. And I also want to ask you as well, is the content personalization just your name, or are you also incorporating, user behavior content as well? 11% demographic segmentation, 11% we haven't started yet, and 5% not sure. So a lot of room for improvement, which is also really exciting to see. And hopefully we can give you some tips today. I'm pretty sure we will, on how you can, increase those percentages too. Cool. On to the next slide. So yeah, what we did is we actually measured from the data of our own customers. And at first we looked at the percentages of messages that are falling into each step there. So obviously our goal at Leanplum is to make sure, how can we get our customers to that top right tier, incorporating all the steps below and also including that personalization of content. So interestingly, not a lot of sends are all like that, right? So if you look at the graph here, you see less than 10% of the total sends that we looked at were these behaviorally triggered messages with a personalized content. So not that much, right? Definitely some low hanging fruit probably we can grab there. And about 41% are utilizing the behavioral segmentation, which is also great to see. But majority are just using that basic demographic segmentation today. So even those of you in the poll who said, you were using the message content and behavior triggered delivery, if you look at the whole scope of all of your messages, does that account for 10% of your total sends, or is that the majority? So even within your program and campaigns, where can you increase up the ladder on different messages? So yeah, if there is one key takeaway though, from my portion anyways, on how these strategies will impact your business, this slide here is probably it. So feel free to grab a screenshot if you'd like. We introduced a metric called RPM, essentially a revenue per 1,000 messages. And the goal of this was to really understand, if you climb that ladder, you actually get more value or more revenue, right? And the data, as you can see here, is yes. So if we look at how much exactly that is, if you're looking at that baseline, basic demographic foundation, you can look at that as a one-time. And then if you start using behavioral segmentation, you see that essentially double already, 2 times more revenue. And then if you incorporate the top 2 as well, that brings you to a 3 times revenue boost from that standard demographic segmentation. So there is a lot of money on the table. And I think it's just a matter of looking at what other different data points can you be including here and the types of triggered messages that you could be sending to really increase your revenue over a longer period of time. We also thought would be interesting is to look at a channel point of view, because there is various channels that you can send through from Leanplum, and the channel mix is obviously very different as well, depending on customer and what have you. So this is kind of the global average here. But coincidentally, when you look at scheduled push versus triggered push, we see a 5 times increase in revenue. And this is the same for email, right? So it just goes to reinforce that if you're these trigger-based communication is always going to increase your revenue. And what our studies show is 5 times that. Another interesting takeaway maybe is that people are using different channels for different reasons. So even though we see email as generating a lot of revenue here, it is a longer format. It isn't the right channel necessarily for that real-time communication that might need to trigger off when someone's in the app. It's more of, life cycle or re-engagement campaigns. But with in-app, for example, that is something you're likely triggering off users' behavior in the app itself. So that's why it also makes sense that they are seeing a higher revenue per milli as well. If we look at push, while it's low on the scale for the RPM here, push is still it's a volume channel, right? So in total of the amount of revenue, it's still a big piece of the puzzle there. But just because of the volume, that's why we see it on the lower RPM, but obviously still a very important mix in the marketing strategy. Cool. And I just wanted to wrap up with some key takeaways. This is, just a couple of things that we had discussed here. So obviously, personalization is something that we all are striving to be at, but, we're still a little bit far away from that, or there's still a lot of room for improvement. So how can we take steps to climb up that ladder? Because 50% of messages today, are still on that kind of basic demographic segmentation. So that is something to keep in mind here. And then if you do get to that message content and personalization, you should see that 3 times increase in revenue. So yeah, I think that's something to work towards and keep in mind. And of course, use holdbacks and benchmarks as well to make sure that you are calculating and making sure that you're seeing these revenue improvements as well. And the last here, we have the key recommendations. So incorporating those holdbacks, but then beyond that is to see how you can use more triggered-based messaging and also personalizing, as mentioned, the content of that. So thanks for listening. With that, I will pass it over to Becky.
Thanks, Brooke. I'm going to chat through a bit about Popstar's pathway to personalization. Thanks, Brooke, for the title.
No worries.
So first of all, I'll give you a quick intro to Popstar. So I'm hoping this little video will play. This should show a little app walkthrough. So our founders, Liam and Tom, started Popstar in 2016. So we recently had our 5th birthday a couple of weeks ago. We are a photo printing app, and our mission is to automatically curate the world's stories. So Popstar is really trying to tap into the fact that a lot of people take photos on their phone nowadays. And we wanted to create a really easy way to turn these memories from phone photos into photo books in minutes. So we've recently expanded our range, and we now have things like calendars and photo tiles. And we've got a massive data science and big engineering team who are working on always improving the app to make sure that we do all of the hard work for you. So our medium time to convert is 12 minutes, so it's pretty quick, and our install to purchase rate is 20%. So we ship globally. So last year, actually only 18% of our revenue came from the UK, although we are UK based. We're growing really, really fast. So our team is now 60 people, and our 3-year growth rate is over 10,000%. So I'm going to chat to you about 3 use cases today. So the first is just the approach that we've taken to optimizing our behavior triggered campaigns. And then the second is a bit about how we're looking to personalize the design of the products that we recommend to users in our marketing. And then finally, about how we're going to use some of the work that our data science team is working on at the moment to give users ideas for their next products. So the first use case, so this is optimizing our key behavior trigger campaign. So from the user's point of view, we want to make it really, really easy for them to navigate through the app. And then obviously on the Popstar side, we want to help improve our conversion rate through the funnel. And on the funnel side, as a business, it's something that we spend a lot of time looking at. Next slide, please. And understanding how we can move users from A to B and what are the steps that users take between these 2 actions. The challenge that we have, beyond a sort of typical e-commerce funnel, is that a user has to curate and create their products. One of the main funnels that we always look at is this account created to first order funnel. It's a little bit small here, so you might not be able to see, but you can kind of see the steps that a user has to take in between account creation and print ordered. And these are all registered on a user's profile as they move through this. And there are Also lots of other funnels. So if a user makes an edit to their book or they change the size of a product they've picked, those will also appear. And we also like to look at the average time it takes a user to convert between each of these steps too. So this funnel formed the basis, oh, previous slide, please, this one. So this funnel formed the basis of our first welcome series. So the way we kind of approached this was to map out all of our messages using this sort of flowchart format. And we split users off on different journeys based on what they had or hadn't done in the app at this point. And the message of each send was kind of informed by those smaller in-between events throughout the funnel. So for example, there's a little push screen grab there. If a user hasn't uploaded any photos by this point in the journey, we'll trigger a push that tells them the kind of photo sources they can link to the app. And then the email example is for users that have created a book, but haven't yet added that to their basket yet. So we're just pulling in some of the key features that we have in the Popstar app. The benefit of this kind of big campaign is that you can do lots of testing around frequency and like whole message testing. But if you want to kind of optimize multiple steps of the funnel at one time, it can be quite hard to isolate the tests and the results of those tests to understand the impact. So yeah, overall, this previous version drove about a 20% uplift in baskets versus the control, but we've moved on to this new iteration of the campaign. So V1 at the top there was triggered off account creation, and the goal was always monetization, whereas now we've sort of broken it down to lots of mini campaigns, which are triggered off each individual step so that we can optimize to different goals. And we've also done a lot of digging into these reasons why people drop off at each point so that we can address any blockers through our messaging. And yeah, the idea is to hopefully A/B test every step of this funnel. So in the next slide, I've just got an example of how that might look in Leanplum. So in this view, we've got 4 different variants, and we can have a similar number of variants throughout the whole funnel without muddying the results of any A/B tests. So I've also got a couple of examples from this particular flow. So this one is targeting users who drop off before uploading their photos. So this is the first sort of big drop off for us. So we've conducted a load of customer interviews to try and figure out exactly why this is. And a couple of blockers that we identified are, first, that people have photos stored in lots of different places, and then secondly, that they're not quite sure what to create yet. So this is a couple of examples of our messaging that kind of looks to address those blockers. And then in the next example, this is users who have created a product, but they haven't yet added it to their basket. So blockers here are potentially users want to see what their product's going to look like, which can be quite hard on mobile, and also the price is sometimes a bit of a blocker. So in the first example on the left, we've got a push message, which when you hold it down, we've got a little GIF that kind of shows what our iOS 3D preview looks like, and then it will deep link into the preview into the app for the user. And then on the right hand side, if a user hasn't converted or hasn't added the product to their basket after a certain amount of time, we've got a little push that hints towards there being a surprise in the app. And then it's chained to an in-app message, which will pop up the next time the user goes into the app. So in summary, so we drilled into our funnels and used these as a sort of structure for our new smaller campaigns. And then we used customer research to dig into the reasons for drop-off and use the results of that to sort of tailor our messaging. And then we plan to run lots of A/B tests, as I mentioned, and we'll probably end up using a universal control for this. Cool. So the next use case is around personalizing the design of our product recommendations. So we really want to help our users pick and create designs that suit their taste. And then on our side, it will hopefully drive up repeat purchase. So our users' creations vary a lot in style. So here are just some examples that I whipped up. And we work with a lot of influencers. So some of those are kind of going for the more neutral text-only covers, whereas yeah, there are some users that still like this bright cover with an image. And every time a user places a purchase, there are obviously lots of parameters attached to that purchase event. So things like the color, the cover layout, the size of the product. So we are looking to take some of those event parameters and change them into user attributes so that we can personalize our content. So we already have, I think, around 90 attributes against our user records in Leanplum. So on top of those, we're going to add a couple more attributes relating to the color and layout of the user's most recent purchase. And hopefully we'll be able to group those into audiences, and that will enable us to personalize our marketing around those audiences. So I've got a couple of examples next. So this first example shows a couple of different users on the left-hand side who we have these new user attributes for around sort of color preference and cover layout style. And we can see the yearbooks that they created last year. So we might use that kind of knowledge to personalize the image that we show each user for our yearbook broadcast send next year, which is quite a high volume campaign for us. And the design doesn't obviously have to be like exactly the same. That'd be a lot of effort for the creative team, but you can see that you can create sort of similar designs that might appeal a little bit more to the user. And then the next example, so this user on the left-hand side has made a very vibrant photo book. So we might look to promote our calendars to this user a few months later using a similar sort of color palette and also using the photo that they use as their cover photo as an image in the calendar. And then the next example, so just one more example, this user bought some white bordered prints and we may trigger a photo tiles push message a few weeks later that sort of showcases a similar sort of vibe imagery. Yeah, those all of my examples. So to summarize, we've sort of figured out the event parameters that we think would be useful as user attributes, and we're going to try and use these to tailor imagery in our marketing, but obviously prioritizing our higher volume campaigns because this can be quite resource heavy. Cool. So that use case was still sort of very much based on the design of what users have created already. So use case 3 is about how we can give users more ideas for their next creation. So on our side, hopefully it will increase purchase frequency outside of the kind of big events like Mother's Day and Christmas. So we have historical purchase data and we've got those new user attributes that I chatted through in the previous slide. So we know what they bought, we know what the kind of design is that they might go for next time. And we also know what the title was that they gave their product for some users. So I've got a little chart here on the right that shows the top book titles over the last 30 days. So there's a lot of yearbooks in there, even going back to previous years. There's some Mother's Day sends in there, and family and memories are quite popular titles for our users. However, a lot of users leave this blank, so we don't know what their print was about. So we can make our kind of broad recommendations around things like Mother's Day, as I mentioned, but we want to be able to give some more relevant and like specific ideas for each user, which is where our data science team come into it. So there are a couple of projects that they're working on at the moment around understanding book themes and helping users to write captions. So we've obviously got the photo book title for some users. The data science team are looking at tags on photo books. So using a model that runs on the device, which is the screen grab in the top right corner. So you can see, I don't know whether you can see, there's a wedding example and it's pulling out keywords like bridesmaid and dresses. And then on the left-hand side, it's kind of recognizing that that's a beach and a holiday destination. They're also using metadata from photos. So you can obviously find out things like the location. And then they're also using an image captioning model, which extracts features from an image without ever actually needing the image, which goes way over my head. But these 4 examples are some images that that model has captioned for us. My favorite is the dog on the left-hand side. So where marketing kind of comes into this is that this will hopefully enable us to have a new user attribute called theme. So I've got a couple of examples. So the user in the top example has created some wedding prints, and we can see that from the theme. And we also still know the color preference and style. So we can then recommend a product that kind of follows on from that. So a wedding album. In the bottom example, the users created some holiday photos, and we can see from their image that they've been on a beach holiday. So we might recommend some photo tiles and use beach imagery in those tiles to try and appeal a little bit more to the user. And then this example shows a user that's put a photo of their dog in their calendar. And we are hopefully going to, for our sort of broadcast ends that we still do rely on, have several versions of a hero image. So we could have a pet image, a holiday image, a family image, depending on what the user has made previously. And then the final example is just suggesting collections of books based on the first theme of their first book. So this user's made a travel book, so we can show a collection of travel books that have a similar sort of cover layout and feel to them to hopefully encourage repeat purchase. Yeah, to summarize that, so we've done a lot of work to try and understand the why behind a user's purchase. I say we, I mean the data science team. So hopefully us as marketing will be able to use this information we have on users to suggest really relevant ideas for their next creation. And if this is coupled up with the design preference data, hopefully the products will be, yeah, something that really appeal to the user in terms of design and idea. And that is it from me.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Becky. Super insightful. And I'm sure that gives a lot of, inspiration and ideas to others joining in. So really appreciate that. Yeah, I do see there's some questions in the chat here. So I'll just have a go ahead and read those out and then we can, oh, perfect. Okay. We're not sharing anymore. Perfect. So one of the questions coming in is they're interested to know which app verticals are most advanced in using personalization, like we discussed, and are there any specific apps that are best in class right now, apart from Popstar? So there are definitely a lot of verticals. It's funny you should ask this question because we're actually doing this, a deeper dive into this type now that we have this ladder to understand which verticals are doing the best in this. Some of the ones that we can tell already is gaming is a huge one, because there's a lot of different in-app games and in-app activities. This is a channel that we see has this, really experienced in this and is doing it very well. So maybe you can also go to certain gaming apps to get some inspiration there. I think e-commerce is obviously a huge one as well, because of things like adding to wish lists and, favoriting and searching. These are all different kind of actions that you can later retarget or interact with the user on. And then even things I've seen a lot of meditation apps as well, being able to recommend other types, or, if they didn't finish a meditation, recommend a lower, a lower minute meditation or something like that. So it really depends, I think, what is possible in your app, right? If there's a lot of actions similar to Becky's point that a user can take, then the world is kind of, the options are endless. So that's something to take a look at. And yeah, any thoughts on that, Becky? Have you seen any good ones lately?
No, I agree with you on the gaming apps and e-commerce.
Yeah,
perfect.
perfect.
It's very kind of specific to your app, isn't it? I just recommend digging into the funnels and looking at all the different events that your user can take and the different paths they can go on.
Totally. And yeah, in tracking these additional parameters that you suggested, right? Because these kind of contextual data points about a specific event are the things that which you can personalize on. And that's where we get to the content personalization, which is obviously important as we saw today. I think this is one for you, Becky, but I also have a thought here. It's from David Walker. Between each section of the flow, I think we were talking about the onboarding flow there. How long do you allow a user to be blocked before triggering an email to get them back into the app?
Oh, okay. So is this in between the sort of mini campaigns? So each of those campaigns will be triggered based on the usual time it kind of takes someone to convert between the two steps. So if someone falls out of the sort of step where they've added their photos and kind of complete that step, there will be a delay on the next campaign anyway. So it wouldn't be like they'd go immediately into that and start receiving emails. The delay would be, whatever the average time is to convert usually. So they definitely wouldn't be bombarded one after the other. And we do have a control in Leanplum about the number of emails that users can get in any given day to try and manage that in case they fall into multiple campaigns.
Yep, I think that's some really good points. And obviously I think as well, it depends maybe on, for example, conversion. If you do like an add to basket, this is something that is more top of mind. So I would think that the delay should be much lesser, maybe 30 minutes or an hour, just so you can encourage them back. A couple of days later won't be the right timing for that type of action. So yeah, good feedback there. I do have another question. Do you use customer images to personalize the offer? I think there was one example you gave where you could actually grab that exact maybe photo and personalize that with an email or something.
Yeah, so we have a render of the user's last product that's available as a URL that we can pull into our marketing, but we don't do that very often. We can't like just go and grab any images from the user's photos that they've uploaded without their permission. Yeah, but we definitely are looking to use photos that they've like added to the cover of previous purchases moving forward.
Perfect. Can you share any numbers on what percentage of people actually create and order products based on these recommendations?
We haven't actually implemented any of the personalization stuff yet, so we're still in the process of getting those new user attributes into Leanplum. So I will report back as soon as we have numbers on those. Happy to share them.
I'm thinking APS London 2022, you know, we can come back and share our findings and, you know, talk about the next level of stuff. So Dominique will make sure to come back to you on that one. And Alessandro, familiar name here. I hope you're well. How do you manage creatives production? So email and push with such a deep level of personalization. And, you know, I'm happy to take this one. I think there's a couple of different ways. You know, if you are tracking, let's say, event parameters, these parameters are ways in which you can personalize specific content on. So in Becky's case, for example, if, you know, a photo book and the theme is yellow, then you can follow up with something specific to yellow. So this is something that is just a matter of tracking the right data and utilizing this to trigger messages off or to personalize content. There's also a functionality that we have called linked data, which is essentially pulling different like recommendations or different data from an external source. So you can really in real time make that message as personal to the user. So yeah, let's say, I'm a good example here. Yeah, similar to if they've just done, you know, a graduation, maybe they want, you know, first year of college or something like that. These are different things that you can connect through linked data options. And that's something we can also discuss offline, Alessandro. Cool. Also a follow-up here, maybe from Dominique. Can you, oh no, it was already, we answered that one. Okay, cool. It looks like those were all the questions we had for today. But Becky, feel free to deny this if you'd like, but I think we're both probably open if anyone has any follow-up questions to just reach out to us via LinkedIn or something. And we really hope that you enjoyed the presentation today.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always like happy to have like little ideas and knowledge shares with anyone. So just send me a message if you're interested in chatting.
Love that. Awesome. And thanks, James, for another great event. And yeah, looking forward to participating next time.
Thanks, Brooke, and thanks, Becky. That was perfect end to the 4 days of App Promotion Summit London 2021. Loved all the sort of screenshots and the detail. I think it's always good when you really sort of dig into the flows there. So it was really good, and appreciate Becky taking part and putting all the work into the case study. It was great to have that. And yeah, perfect way to end our 4 days of app growth knowledge. And yeah, hopefully see you all soon. So thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.